It's a boy!
They had this expression for many years at New Line that it's the house that Freddy built. It's the house that Freddy built, the house that Freddy built, I think, a few wings on.
A Nightmare on Elm Street was the very first huge hit. People started really thinking of them seriously as a studio.
Every time you have a success, it propels your company forward. That was our first one.
He really brought the company to a level where they could potentially compete.
We went from a company that was very little known to be much more respected.
This is the place that you think of when you think of quality horror films.
New Line has grown from the independent world to a big studio.
Everything came off of Nightmare. And ultimately, so did Lord of the Rings.
Freddy's a great stalwart, certainly one of the big supports holding up New Line cinema.
One could say that if we hadn't had Nightmare on Elm Street, our house would be rather dilapidated.
New Line Cinema was a couple of guys. It was Bob Shea and Sarah Risher. There was no New Line Cinema the way we know it today, where it's a huge organization.
What I learned at New Line is you do everything yourself because you can't afford to hire a lot of people to do things.
Their basic business was selling Reefer Madness, a couple other small films.
If they sound weird, we probably distributed them. We distributed films like Creepers, Mountain of the Cannibal Gods. My particular interest in horror films was that they were inexpensive to make or acquire and fairly reliable in terms of being able to sell. I was drawn to it just by virtue of our position in the industry, which was pretty low on the totem pole.
Then Bob wanted to get into making movies, and the first film we made was called Alone in the Dark.
Jack Palance wouldn't come out of his trailer the first day, and we said, why? He said, because he didn't want to do any night work. It is called Alone in the Dark, Jack. Jack Palance also announced that he was against violence, and so he didn't want to do any killing. So all he got to do was to menace everybody, and the other two guys did all the killing. It did satisfy an audience and find its audience, and that's the best part about being in the movie business. The first film that we released that really had the kind of success that we were hoping for was Nightmare on Elm Street.
When I first saw Freddy, I was just scared to death. Burnt flesh and the glove with razor blades on the fingertips.
It was wonderful to be around the birth of what became a really big hit.
$4 million made over the weekend. Like, that was like a huge amount of money.
It was the must-see movie for the dorm guys and the slackers, and then it just grew and grew and grew.
The video cassette came out, then everyone started to see it.
It's just a dream, this isn't real!
It had taken on this life.
Of course, after we saw it, we go, sequel. He's such a good character, they're probably going to bring him back.
Come to Freddy. We sold it well internationally, and our distribution people at that time said, listen, this is a perfect movie to do a sequel with. And I said, okay, then let's get going and try to make a sequel.
Bob did call me for Nightmare 2 and sent me the script, and I just really felt the script was inferior.
There's absolutely nothing, nothing wrong with this house.
I heard that they had created a script and didn't have my character in it.
I'm scared.
Jesse, who is doing this to you?
Fred Krueger!
Nightmare 2 had a problem because the concept was that Freddy was going to come into the real world and then terrorize people. And nobody really liked that. They liked Freddy in the dream world.
Seeing him at a pool party just hacking up kids.
You are all my children now.
I think the second one was a bit of a warning to Bob that he needed to put more into it and kind of honor the films.
No!
Made more money than the first. That's the way the world goes.
So, of course, we realized we had to start Nightmare 3.
It's all over.
With The Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I think that they really got the story back on track.
The way Elm Street 3 began, he had written the script and then he wasn't particularly involved. Wes had done some great surreal imagery, but I thought we could actually enter the dreamscapes.
Are you ready?
In my case, having kids find their own dream powers.
Demon be gone!
That's when they really started delving into Freddy taking each of these kids, some weakness that they had.
Let's get hard.
Really exploiting it and making it more personal.
What a rush.
Nightmare 3 was received very well. I was delighted. Grosses in the box office were more than the first two put together. And it really became a bigger franchise after 3.
Oh my God. It's what every studio dreams of, is to have a franchise.
Perhaps if there was More of me to spread around.
And here we made a movie that had no intention of being one and then ended up going for 15, 20 years.
I love the fourth movie. It was really scary. The look of it was darker. Freddy was darker.
Part 5, The Dream Child, the first film set I ever went to, and it featured the Dream Pram, the Dream baby carriage with big old spiky wheels.
I love the whole idea that Freddy wanted to get to her baby.
Nightmare 5, I think, got a little over the top with the little baby Freddy.
He's the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. One of the inmates is played by Robert Englund.
It was an interesting concept of Freddy affecting an unborn baby's dreams or using those dreams to get into reality.
School's out, Krueger.
Whenever you're the first in a line of successive projects, I felt very protective of the whole thing, you know, kind of like the mother hen. I didn't want them to make a bad one, that's for sure.
We didn't have much else. You had to just find something, or otherwise we'd just be living from hand to mouth as distributors. It was all we had on our shelf, so we had to keep reusing it.
The idea of, well, let's just kill him, like for good and for real, that had a lot of resonance.
Time to die, you scar-faced lint dick!
And what we ended up doing is hiring multiple people to try to come up with different takes.
Call on one of your little friends. Maybe they could help.
I brought up the idea of Peter Jackson, whom I knew from his early splatter films, and he did come up with a take. The title of it was called The Dream Lover, but at that point, the script that Rachel Talalay was supervising was in, and also was really strong and had this Freddy's Dead concept, and the idea that it was going to be in 3D at the end. I still remember the first test we had for VHS, and they gave us the glasses, and they said, okay, here's the test, and they showed us this footage. And when the test was over, we looked at each other and went, I didn't see anything. The technology just wasn't right there yet for the VHS side.
Welcome to Freddy 101.
What you have is the first film, which is unique and a groundbreaker. And then because of the popularity of that character, you have the Freddy Krueger phenomenon of let's make him into a fun guy.
Krueger! Well, it ain't Dr. Seuss.
Wes gets a little ticked off by where we went in the series with the humor.
No screaming while the bus is in motion.
But Freddy's funny in the first one. He takes the face off of Tina and puts it on himself.
Freddy.
And he cuts his fingers off.
I think with the third movie, that's where they really came up with the kind of one-line quip before he kills somebody.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV.
Welcome to prime time, bitch.
He was still capable of killing you, but he did it and made a great joke at the same time.
How's this for a wet dream?
And of course, the subsequent movies, you have these enormous production numbers of dreams. Dreams in which Freddy Krueger can do absolutely anything that could be done in a Looney Tune.
Told ya! Comic books was bad for ya!
So Freddy Krueger is now the Henny Youngman of horror. And we just kind of forget that he was, of course, this child killer because he's so funny.
Bon appetit, bitch! This is my favorite.
The success of Freddy basically gave rise to New Line's merchandising department.
Now, there's some great silly stuff that came out, the picture books and the posters.
There were dolls.
I still have all kinds of creepy Freddy dolls of all different sizes. Big ones, there was even some pull-string dolls. Something about a toy of Freddy is actually a very creepy thing.
Welcome to Elm Street.
The most fun part of it to me was Freddy becoming the most popular Halloween costume.
Little kids had Freddy sweaters.
To look out on Halloween and see little kids crossing the street in front of your car or whatever wearing Freddy costumes.
There's something a little twisted about that. What are you dressed up as? The guy who murdered and molested children. What are you?
The idea had spread beyond anything that we could contain at the time.
Well, there was a long period where I felt that this thing was making incredible amounts of money, and I wasn't participating in any way of any significance at all, and it was kind of painful. And then something very interesting happened. Bob Shea actually called me up and said, you know, I've heard things, I've read things, and, you know, why don't you come in and we'll talk. I went in, and he said, first of all, I want to hear all your complaints. If I offended you, if I did anything, let me know. So I had a very frank kind of airing. And to his credit, he says, we'll make those things right. And he gave me a significant retroactive participation. I thought, it's pretty incredible. I can't think of another studio that would have done that. And then he said, the other thing is, we killed Freddy off in the last one, and we said he was absolutely dead.
Happy Father's Day.
We just feel around here that we could maybe bring Freddy back one more time, but we don't know how to do it. I decided to have lunch with everybody, and I had Robert, Heather, people I hadn't seen in years. And everybody talked about how the film had changed their life. Heather had, for instance, been stalked.
Leave us alone, you son of a bitch!
And I was telling him like how it was just making me crazy and I was scared all the time.
He started again. And he's putting stuff in my mail again.
And so then like 2 weeks later on my doorstep is this script that's like everything that I had told him in the context of Freddy Krueger.
Miss me.
It was a serious movie. Freddy had a new look, touched on a lot of the cool scenes from the original movie.
Look at number 1, and then you look at number 7, and then you get a sense of what Wes Craven wanted to do.
Nightmare really changed everything for New Line.
Up to number 4, 3 and 4 were both well done, delivered the goods, and very much an important aspect of the company.
The fact that you're successful exploiting and promoting and marketing a property lets other suppliers know that you could be a destination point.
You've got the body. I've got the brain.
We used the success of Nightmare on Elm Street as a calling card to investment bankers to have our own initial public offering. With the additional financing that we had, we were able to increase our bank line and do a lot of other things so that we weren't only beholden to a Nightmare on Elm Street.
What?
Bob was able to put together a deal with RCA Columbia Home Video, and they did an output deal with us for 10 pictures, and the first 2 were going to be Critters.
Critters, New Line's answer to the Gremlins. Critters were these little puppets from outer space that basically they're here to eat you.
They actually look like porcupines, and they shoot these killer spikes out at you.
It spawned a theatrical sequel, Critters 2, and then 2 more direct-to-videos. And we are looking to resurrect the Critters brand. The Mangler, the killer washing machine. Really gruesome. Not that they showed you so much, but it was definitely a gut test. So of course, I'm like, oh, I think this movie's making me sick. We have to buy it. Man's Best Friend. That was the dog who had gotten injured, and they put all these parts in. It was like Terminator dog.
The Hidden was a really intelligent sci-fi movie. The story was good, the action was great.
Hidden alien-type creature.
Are we talking spacemen here?
Where it would look for its host and would turn into that host. It really wasn't just a shock movie. It was like a thinking person's horror sci-fi movie.
The Blade films were a lot of fun. There was a combination of kind of a martial arts vampire thing that I hadn't seen before.
Hip, edgy, based on a comic book.
The great thing about that franchise is they really stayed true to the vision of the filmmakers on that. It was a dark vampire movie. It had an African-American lead. New Line took a chance on a concept that was before its time, and now everybody's doing urban horror films.
I especially liked 7, and it kind of took thrillers into horror. I thought it crossed the genre.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a homicide.
7 is a kind of strange subgenre of crime films where you have spectacular crimes committed with a theme.
Honestly, have you ever seen anything like this?
Aside from the whole movie being dark, the ending's really grim and depressing, and I know that a lot of studios wanted to cut that, and New Line took a chance on that movie and made something really special.
That was a movie that showed that New Line could attract the A-level talent, the A-level directors. That just showed that New Line was a force to be reckoned with, not just the studio that could carve out the niches.
I think that in some cases the studios look at horror films from a bit of a distance, as if it's the ugly stepchild of film genres, when in fact, if you're in a theater, that's where you'll hear the greatest reactions.
There's always room for a good horror film. People love a good scare. There would not be 7 different Freddy movies if there wasn't an audience for it.
Horror films did not always have a franchise. Now it's almost a given that you're going to have a franchise.
The Friday the 13th franchise was at Paramount for many, many years, and it features the exploits of Jason Voorhees.
He's the one that came back for years and was hacking his way through Camp Crystal Lake and killing numerous teenagers.
The Friday the 13th movies are strictly, it's just one formula. If you have an orgasm, you're going to have a spear put through you, literally.
We looked at that character and saw that there was still a life in what was considered by our competition, that it had run its course. And Sean Cunningham, who's the producer of those films, had the thought that maybe we should make more and maybe New Line's the right place to do it.
I went to Mike Lynn and Bob Shea, who I knew, who were running New Line. What if we took Freddy and Jason and put them in the same movie? They thought it was a great idea if I could just get the rights. And I was able to get the rights from Paramount and Warner Brothers and be able to bring them to New Line. So then we got to make Friday 9.
We resurrected him. Jason goes to hell. Jason's out chasing after the young teenagers at a camp. Jason does go to hell at the end of the movie. Up comes Freddy's glove.
Which was in anticipation of what we hoped was going to be the Freddy-Jason heavyweight prize fight. And we were not able to convince people at New Line that we had broken the back of the script. Once again, I'm saying, well, we're going to have to keep it alive somehow. What if we did Jason in space?
Critters went to outer space. Hellraiser went to outer space. Now Jason goes to outer space.
Everybody would say, Freddy versus Jason, that's great, I want to see it. But then you read a script and you say, that's not very good.
The rules are inherently incompatible. Freddy, it's the dream world, and how does he access people? Do they need to be asleep? Is he asleep? So how do you get Jason into dream world or Freddy into the real world?
New Line really wanted to find the right story because you don't want to jump the shark on this movie because you could destroy both franchises.
We developed Freddy vs. Jason for 10 years before we finally got a script that we liked enough to make. And when we made it, it actually was a great success.
People were just so curious to see these two pop icons trying to duke it out in some sort of a world heavyweight horror match.
It was worth waiting for because, Ronnie, you got it right.
For the film to do over $80 million in the box office was just fantastic. I think it really surprised everybody. Also goes to show you that the horror fan base is very loyal, and they love both of these characters.
Like Friday the 13th, Leatherface is under the umbrella now of New Line Cinema, which is a good thing.
It is interesting that New Line now has the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street because you have Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface all in the same place.
You're looking at the same thinking that went on 40 years ago at Universal. Universal Pictures had the rights to Dracula, the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, and the Mummy.
And as they start running their course, then all of a sudden it's Frankenstein versus the Mummy and the Wolfman. And eventually it was Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein.
For New Line to get Jason, Freddy, and Leatherface, by rounding up these 3 mythic killers under one banner, you have a franchise. Not one franchise, but 3.
Part of it is that Bob Shea really digs horror movies. It is the foundation on which the company was built.
You don't want to miss the bus.
We have a horror idea. Our head of production, to his credit, will go, talk to Bob.
There are certain reliable genres in movie entertainment that have been pretty solid citizens and reliable in terms of creating a profit for the investment. Think back, there will be a lot of films that have been low-budget horror movies.
Final Destination really was started out and from the meetings back in the day of, let's make a really cool horror movie and make one good one.
You can just drop fucking dead.
I was sitting on a plane one time and I read this article about this woman who was going to take a flight, and her mother called her the night before she was going to get on the plane and said, don't take that flight. I have a bad feeling about it. And the woman didn't take the flight and the plane went down. You know, what if she was meant to die on that flight? And what if death came after her? And I was like, holy crap, we've never seen death in a movie.
What if we were not meant to get off that plane? What if it still is our time?
The first Final Destination was actually a sleeper hit of the year. It was one of New Line's biggest hits that year. Death is always around us. I think it's a movie that could continue going on as long as there are new and interesting stories to tell.
Anytime you can create a franchise that people are familiar with or excited by, it's a huge plus.
The key thing is just to look for good stuff, and then the franchise will find you. I mean, Lord of the Rings is the classic example. No one here thought that was going to be a $3 billion kind of home run. Everyone sort of thought this will be good, but no one thought it would turn into the phenomenon it did.
New Line Cinema is a studio that takes chances, and these chances, you know, more often than not pay off. And when they do pay off, you get really good films.
One of the great beauties of New Line is to pick stories that have, at their core, something that appeals to an avid, motivated audience of filmgoers.
Leatherface, Freddy, Jason, Pinhead, Michael Myers. Not our characters, yet the future's pretty exciting. I don't know if we'd see a Freddy versus Leatherface versus Jason versus Death. It's really hard to predict where horror is going to be in the future, but I'm sure New Line will actually be there making the good stuff.